interrupt this program to bring you a special bulletin.
All right, we're back with the final broadcast interruption for the conclusion to Rings of Power Season 2. We're a little late, but that's okay. So
it's not going anywhere.
No, it's not going anywhere. Conversation hasn't died down yet. I keep seeing that like they haven't renewed it for Season 3, but I'm pretty sure Amazon just said we're doing 5 seasons of it and didn't even bother with the renewing. So I don't know what to believe online when you see so many people saying it hasn't been renewed yet.
Right.
And then you also see people like, oh, it was confirmed for 5. Well, I don't know what it is, but I have a feeling it's confirmed for 5 seasons.
And I don't know how all that works, because yes, I know for a fact that when it initially was greenlit for production, they said we're going to do 5 seasons. I don't know if there's some like veto button that someone like some exec can push and be like, we're calling the rest of it off. Yeah, I don't know if it's like we're good for 5 seasons unless somebody says otherwise, or if that like carries throughout the whole thing. So I guess we'll find out soon enough.
I wondered, like, instead of the veto button, I could see like, hey, guess what? Next season you have half the budget. Sorry guys, like you can't justify. Because I did a little research after this one. I was curious. The budget for Season 1 was adjusted for inflation about the same as the budget for the entire movie trilogy.
Oh, I thought it was more than that.
Not the Hobbit trilogy.
I guess the adjusted for inflation, that makes sense.
Yes, adjusted for inflation, it's about the same.
Yeah.
Okay. So, which makes me have so many more problems. But the Season 2 budget was never like confirmed exactly what it was, but it was supposed to be higher still.
The number that was thrown out, and I did not actually confirm this, I saw it online somewhere, and I have not done any research to back this up. The number I saw was like $58 million per episode or something like that. That seems high, but I didn't confirm it. But
what does that? 58 times 8. So that's about 464 for the whole season. See, I saw it was about 600.
Okay, so that might be the right number.
So yeah. So let's get into this. The finale begins with Durin finding Disa comforting or last rites to a fallen soldier. And this immediately reminded me of the scene from the previous episode. Must not have been an illusion from Sauron, but was Sauron affecting the ring that King Durin was wearing? Is poor editing on the portrayal of that scene in the previous episode, because I could have sworn that he was just faking it. And anyways, but leads me to believe that he was affecting the ring, causing King Durin to create this distraction to prevent Durin the Fourth from leaving. Durin the Fourth tells his father to take off the ring or he will take his whole hand. His dad instantly calls his bluff, and Durin the Fourth tells this arm wrestling story that's kind of sweet. It just kind of felt out of place to me. You would let me get close to winning. And I'm like, this would have been great to have in a conversation earlier, like at a slower moment, and then brought back up at this moment. That would have been a better gut punch for me. As is, I still kind of like the story. King Durin says, nah, the ring isn't coming off, and busts through a wall to show us this vast mithril fortune on the other side. And the Balrog just wakes up and comes to that spot and is like, how dare you poke holes in my wall?
Get off my lawn.
Yeah, get off my lawn. King Durin, he's much older than them. King Durin at one point says something about behold the vast wealth of our mountain. And I like when Durin the Fourth looks at him and says, it's not our mountain, father. You taught me that. And that goes back to the respect that the dwarves have had for the mountains. Mm-hmm. So I liked that little element there. But The Balrog just suddenly knows they are there and is clearly mad because I've never seen a Balrog in a different state. And what I learned in this scene is the Balrog has 3 opening moves. It's the whip crack, the roar, and then the sword draw, because that's exactly what he used when he met Gandalf thousands of years later.
He's got his routine, man.
He's got his routine. This is how he greets people. Whip crack, roar, sword. Then we can move on past that. So he does the same thing to King Durin. King Durin decides now is a good time to take off the ring. And I'm not sure what motivates that. But he's like, oh, Balrog's here. Take this off. And puts it on the rock. And he asks his son for forgiveness, which I kind of like. I've liked their relationship. And then decides he is going to slow motion anime jump into fighting the Balrog. So the Balrog itself looks real good. Mm-hmm. It looks like Peter Jackson's Balrog. So I don't know how they get around that, but it looks a lot like Peter Jackson's Balrog, which is a freaking cool design. So it's the same
Balrog in the same place. So maybe that was the thing. Like it canonically, it's the same. It's not just like a similar creature that's in the same place. It's the same creature in the same place. So they might have been like, we kind of have to do it this way because it's already established that this is what Durin's Bane looks like.
Yeah, because in the text, the description of the Balrog is fairly vague. Like there are a couple different interpretations. There's a couple different illustrations of it. All of them are super cool. Yeah. And the Balrog's just one of the coolest fantasy creatures ever. I love it. But I think it's cooler than a dragon. That's just me personally. I think it's sick. I really liked the shadowy wings that we saw in this, or the smoky wings. I thought that was a super cool touch. The scene looked really good. What I didn't care for was King Durin's slow motion leap towards the Balrog when he's got one knee up real high and the other knee off. It looked animated.
Yeah.
It looked like a cartoon pose. Other than that, the king has not moved that agilely the entire show, but now he's going to do this full on anime leap at the Balrog. Other than that, pretty good looking scene.
I have a very similar review to that portion to what you have. I thought that scene looked really good. I thought the looks were a lot better than the content of that scene.
That's a great way to say it. And then right before that scene ends, the last part of that scene, Disa appears after defying her husband who told her to stay put. Disa appears and grabs her husband because surely he would have died without female presence during this pivotal moment. So surely that's why she just shows up and grabs him, and that's the end of that scene. I totally agree. I felt this was almost anticlimactic after they've been building up the Balrog for 2 seasons, and then we bust through a wall. He's like, man, like you said, get off my lawn. Takes out the king, and then that's it. We don't hear about this again. The rest of the Balrog again for the rest of the episode.
Right, and we even go back to Khazad Dûm once or twice in the episode, and they're all just hanging out, having a funeral, or looking profoundly at the throne, and there's some communication. And it's are we just gonna ignore the fact that the king just got nommed by a Balrog? What do you mean?
Why is
we have to go figure out what we're gonna do about Durin's brother now? We're just gonna ignore that there's a freaking Balrog back here?
Why is no one concerned about the demon in the basement? They're all just, I guess we don't go in that one anymore. We'll be fine. We'll move on. That is my biggest frustration with it. Can you tell me, because I don't remember exactly, but in Moria, wasn't the Balrog part of the whole downfall of Moria?
Yes.
Or is it just the way Gandalf, the dwarves delved too greedily and too deep, and it makes it sound like the Balrog, they woke up the Balrog and then it was doom for Moria?
Yeah, it was a contributing factor. It wasn't necessarily like the whole thing. So that Balrog is called Durin's Bane. It's actually called Durin's Bane because it kills Durin the Sixth. So Durin the Fourth's grandson is the one that gets killed, that gets the name. Like that's so apparently the Balrog killed multiple generations of the line of Durin, according to this show. But it's more so like they delve too greedily and too deep. The Balrog starts messing stuff up, and then there's invasions by orcs and everything. So it's more so like the Balrog knocks the kingdom off its axis, and then that allows other evil forces to come in and do bad stuff.
Okay. I'm just picturing in my head the way they built it up. I'm picturing like they wake up the Balrog and then it's just wholesale slaughter on whatever the Balrog can get its hands on. And so I'm picturing this scene to be far more panic than this episode introduced, because there was no panic. It was like, oh, what is this saying? It killed the king. Okay.
It's that meme from, is it I remember who it is, but it's like the oh no. Anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. That's exactly what this is. Because as soon as Disa shows up and rescues her husband, we get the credits. And then after that, we cut to a night in Rune. And one of the problems that have bothered me about nights in Rune is they always seem to look as if they were filmed during the day through a blue filter. So that's one thing that's bothered me about nights in Rune. They don't look like actual night. The stranger is walking through the Hobbit homes and notices everything seems empty, and I feel like we missed an entire episode about what happened here. Am I the only one?
It did seem sudden, yeah.
Because the last time we saw Nori and Poppy and Dark Crystal guy, they were like preparing for battle, preparing to defend their home.
Right. They were getting poison darts together and they were basically gearing up for a battle.
Okay, that's what I thought was our last scene. I wanted to make sure because they're doing that. We got the kiss and the lizard breath, and it was weird. Yeah. And it's stuck in my brain. So then I'm thinking like, oh, we're going to get in this episode a smaller Hobbit battle defending their home. No, we cut straight to the stranger walking through the empty Hobbit lands. Post all of that, apparently. But the Dark Wizard shows up and drops some lore and says, come to the dark side, but without the I am your father monologue, so it's far less interesting. He calls Poppy and Nori out from the caves, and he apparently only brought 2 soldiers to subdue all of these hobbits. And they pull out. The wizard looks at them, or the wizard kills one for hurting one of the hobbits, even though we don't actually see them hurt. He just kind of like roughly shoved them out, and he was like, hey, I told you not to hurt any of them. And he kills one, and then all of a sudden all the hobbits come out of hiding and they're just looking at him. And then when Luke refuses to join Vader, Vader brings all the rocks crashing down, and the hobbits prove to prove a point. And much like Rey in The Last Jedi, Master Gandalf levitates rocks to let his friends escape. I hated this scene. If you couldn't tell by my summary of it.
I could tell. And that answers my question from earlier. I liked one thing about this scene, and this was the thing that I referenced earlier, where I was actually kind of surprised at my reaction to it. I kind of liked the Dark Wizard in this scene. I kind of liked the character coming out a little, because this is the most we've seen of him, right? Like he's just talked to his cultists at this point in his throne room, and it's been pretty dull. It's been pretty boring. He has not been intriguing. I have not cared about who he is, what he is, where his allegiances lie. Like they haven't really done anything to this point to get me to care about this character or want to know more. I kind of liked the dialogue that he had a little bit. It was a little bit of like, you can tell he's evil, but like the way he's just a very smooth talker and like trying to spin things like he's trying to work for the overall greater good. Like, it kind of made me a little interested in this guy.
He was definitely mixing my words, definitely manipulative. And just the way he chose to answer things like, I'm going to dance around what I actually mean and make it sound better. I did walk away from that interaction saying, I don't think he's Saruman. I don't. It doesn't, but then again, I was going to say, I don't think it makes sense. But then again, neither does who the stranger is. So,
the only thing that makes me think it maybe could be Saruman after that is in the Lord of the Rings books, Saruman is specifically called out for his magic lies in his words. So like he has the power to sway minds and hearts with the words that he says. And that's how his magic primarily manifests itself. Like all of the wizards, their magic manifests itself a little differently. Saruman's is primarily through his words and through his influence on people. And so to establish him as like the smooth talking, manipulative, like swaying people with his tongue kind of thing, it could happen. Yeah. I'm with you. I don't think they're going to go that route, but
at this point,
they could.
At this point, they might as well. It doesn't bother me either way because it already didn't go the way I wanted it to.
Right.
So I really just hated this scene. It made all of the Hobbit stuff with the Smeals and whatever, all of that buildup felt so incredibly pointless in this moment.
Mm-hmm.
None of it mattered. None of it mattered except for the one conversation about Nori and Poppy and where they came from and how they were looking for the Shire, basically. That is the only significant thing that has happened to these hobbits since the tornado that blew them out of the Stranger's Way. Like, nothing is worth it in this storyline. And I'm still here. The Stranger and the Dark Wizard, I was mildly curious. This scene, I really just bothered me how we seem to miss so much. And then we jump in on this. And then it's just real quick. This is
the first of at least a couple times where you see something happen on screen and you're like, wait a minute. The last time we saw this character or these characters, they were in this situation and now we're in this situation and we are given no explanation as to how we got from there to here.
Yeah. Like, my biggest question after all of this is not, like, I know the hobbits were preparing for some sort of battle to defend their home. A big frustration is I can buy not seeing that. What I can't buy is seeing the aftermath of that and no occupational force. You're telling me the two soldiers and the wizard subdued all of these hobbits, and maybe the wizard, yes, but the way he is presenting himself is that he wasn't part of it.
Right.
You know, so I have a really hard time buying the entire scenario, and therefore I do not care. So, like you said, I'm still kind of curious on who Dark Wizard is. Mildly interested.
That's all I think either of us got out of this.
Incredibly clunky moment in the show.
Yeah.
So then Master Gandalf levitates rocks, saves his friends. We cut to the tree in Numenor. Looks really good. I like that shot. We see this is a key point that I'll get on at the end of it. We see a small gathering of the leaders of the faithful. I mean, like, apparently the faithful in the entire city of Numenor are 15 people. And Pharazôn surrounds them with soldiers and says, hey, basically the Kraken liked Muriel because she's buddies with Sauron. And they're like, no way. And Pharazôn provides a piece of paper that must have a photo of Muriel in bed with Sauron because it instantly changes their minds.
Right.
He shows them the paper and they're like, no. And then all of a sudden we're arresting the faithful and we see soldiers knocking on doors in the city. And this made me hate the scene in the other episode where we ended this storyline with everybody like, oh, hail Muriel, yay. And then this scene immediately flips it again, showing the Numenorians are fickle and just like, oh, yes, no. Doesn't explain this faithful situation. It tries a little bit when he says what, it's not Manwë, is it? That's who the wizard talked about. Who are the faithful loyal to? It's not Muriel.
Iluvatar?
Farazone?
Is that who they're talking about? I thought he
would
said
assume
something
so.
about the Eldar or something. I don't know.
Oh, I mean, the Eldar are just the elves, so
Okay.
it's essentially saying they're loyal to their ancient connections to the elves.
Okay. So he says something about she's loyal to that and makes you think, okay, that's what the loyal are fighting for. But again, this was another clunky scene meant to get to something that will be interesting. It was just a weird bridge from where we last left this story to where we are now. And
I'm glad we're finally getting to this point where like the line is being drawn in the sand and like we have the faithful and we have everybody else. And like,
yes.
That's an important storyline and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. But yeah, I agree. This was a pretty clunky way of getting us there.
We get some Civil War action coming up. I'm excited for it. I think that's interesting, and I've been waiting all season for it to get there. We see Aaryn has a sudden change of heart and goes to warn her dad that they're coming around up the faithful. And when a guard comes, we find out that they apparently like take orders from her. She's like, yeah, you don't need to go back there. He's like, I don't. Like, do I need to tell Farazan you were poking around? And he's like, oh, okay, I'll go. I'm just like, man, these are wimpy guards because I don't remember just because she's dating Kemen, they listen.
I'm pretty sure that's what happened. I'm pretty sure they started, they got shipped and then all of a sudden she was immediately like promoted in the ranks. And so now like she has hand in the government.
That would make sense. Again, it's one of those things that's not really explained. It's kind of shown, but it's still can't quite connect all the dots. Elendil then goes to Muriel, tries to get Muriel to leave with him, but she refuses. And she gives him Narsil, and we get a very close shot-for-shot moment of him holding it very much like Aragorn does in Return of the King. From the handover to the whatever. I didn't hate it, actually, because I'm not sure what else you do with the sword being given to you like this. It just reminded me of that. But
I did like seeing Narsil and like the fact that they gave it a moment and it wasn't just, oh, this is Elendil's sword. It was kind of like it was kind of a fun moment.
Because Narsil is pretty cool. So I was like,
it's a really cool sword.
And then she tells him to reclaim his destiny, and that was one that I was like, I'm not sure the show has talked much about his destiny, Elendil's destiny. I'm not sure I've heard that much of it. So then that struck me out as just being a copy of when Elrond hands it to Aragorn and tells him. And I was like,
because he definitely does have a destiny laid out for him.
Yes, he does. I'm not sure the show has done enough to tell us about Elendil's. So then we go back to Eregion where we see the battle is not going well. And we get a pretty cool, I actually really liked this long shot that follows various soldiers around the ramparts and through the city. Thought it was pretty cool. I was all right with that.
Can I tell you, I love a one shot.
Yep.
I love a oneer so much. Like what's one of the James Bond movies did a really, really good job with the opening sequence is a oneer and it's like 3.5 or 4 minutes long.
Isn't it Casino Royale?
No, it's the one. It starts in Mexico City on the Day of the Dead. And so like there's a Day of the Dead parade going on and the camera like follows Daniel Craig as he like is walking up the road and then walks into a hotel and checks in and then gets in the elevator and goes up the stairs and into his room. Then he walks out on the roof and like walks along it and goes over to somewhere where he's going to snipe something. It's like a 3.5 minute long oneer and it's so well done. It's one of my favorites. But yeah, all that to say, I am a hoe for a oneer, and so this one got me.
Yep, I agree. I thought this was a pretty good shot. My only complaint about it is that we saw 3 Aragion soldiers. That's it. 3 soldiers from Aragion in the whole thing. And I'm like, again, underwhelming force in this city. But I if I had seen more previously, at this point I would go like, wow, their numbers are really down. But I haven't. So at this point I'm going, wow.
This should be all of them.
They're hanging
we haven't
on.
seen it at this point.
Yep. So then we see towards the end of that shot, Galadriel comes through. She's leading some women and children out through the dwarven tunnels. But apparently there's only like 8 people that she's saving. And they go out through the tunnels and they're surrounded by orcs. And Galadriel says she will trade the rings to spare their lives and to see the leader. So again, I'm going to talk about it all the time because this is my biggest issue with the show. There are other issues. This is my biggest one, is the sense of scale. Why is Galadriel wasting time rescuing 6 people all the way through the tunnels instead of just like putting another elf on 6 people and going for a bigger rescue? Or we're almost meant to believe that she is rescuing all of the women and children from Aragion, and there's 6 or 8 or 10 of them. And it's just a drastically low, depressing number. And it's the same with the soldiers of Aragion. Everything feels so incredibly small for these big things. And that drives me crazy because it definitely takes me out of the moment. And this episode, I thought, was really bad about it. This episode actually made the previous battle episode seem far bigger. So I'll keep getting into it. We cut to Sauron using Celebrimbor as a push pincushion, riddling him with arrows. And this is the moment I didn't know if we were going to get to this season or not.
Right.
I didn't know if this was going to happen here or if it was going to be a next season thing. And it hurt. It hurt. This is one of the better scenes in the episode. Again, Celebrimbor and Sauron are carrying this season.
Throughout the entire season, the vast majority of the best moments in the show are between these 2.
Yep. And this scene hurts. It's clear the 2 have had quite the brawl because the place is an absolute wreck compared from the last time we saw it. And Celebrimbor is beat up far beyond just a couple of arrows that are sticking out of him. He is bruised and bloody and looks like they have just been at it for a while. The nice touch I like on this is that Sauron looks perfect. Which I just thought made it just a little bit more menacing, and I like that. Celebrimbor is defiant till the end, saying the rings are far beyond your reach as I will be ere long. And I'm like, yeah, Celebrimbor. I love it. I love it. He knows he's about to die. Sauron basically says, I know ways of keeping you alive. I also took this as a hint to the ring wraiths, a little bit of messing around with keeping people alive.
Right.
Celebrimbor rises to his feet, and this was the moment that got me a little choked up, seeing him that beat and bloodied stand to his feet in defiance. I was like, there we go. There we go.
Yep.
I like it. And he calls him, and I took this as the way he says it. I took it as an insult when he says Shadow of Morgoth. I took it as belittling. He was like, you will never be anything more than his shadow.
Yep.
You are not. I was like, that is so good. And he basically says the rings shall destroy you. Sauron stabs him with a spear and lifts his body up like a banner. We'll see if it comes back as a banner later. Celebrimbor dies, saying Sauron is not the ring's master, but their prisoner. And as good as this is, I didn't like that line. I didn't like the line because everything the Lord of the Rings taught us was that he was the master of the rings. the rings are not the powerful being here.
Right.
He was not enslaved by the rings he created. He put all his cruelty and malice into the one ring. And that was the one thing that bothered me, is I almost felt like it took some of the responsibility off of him.
I could make the argument that he was not enslaved by the rings themselves, but he was in essence enslaved by the pursuit of the rings. So like his eventual undoing is because he poured so much of his power into the rings, specifically the One Ring, but he did exactly what Morgoth did and poured his evil and malice and power into other things to the point where it made him a lot more susceptible. So even though he isn't a slave to the rings, he kind of ends up being a slave to the pursuit of power through the rings. It's weak, but it's something.
I follow what you're saying. He's a slave to the pursuit of power, but just the way he presented it, I can read into it that much, but somebody who's not going to read into it, it's like, oh, so Sauron is slave to the rings too? Like, nope.
Right.
Nope, that's not the story.
Yeah.
So that was my one issue with that. Other than that, I really like this scene. And I almost thought it was very Tolkienian of them not showing the battle that happened between Celebrimbor and Sauron.
Right, letting that happen off screen.
Yes, and then just kind of seeing the end result of that, because Tolkien was notorious for like a Return of the King battle, and they fought. And I'm like, yep, that's it. That's
right.
He was focused on the story. So
the rest of it can happen in the theater of the mind.
Yes, exactly. So I did kind of appreciate that, as much as I'm like, I want to see some cool elf on Sauron action. After what happens later, I'm glad we didn't. Orc appears in that room and asks if he is Sauron, and Sauron doesn't reply and flips the question back on him, and we cut. We cut to Theo and Isildur.
He did respond the way he's responded every time someone has asked him, "Are you Sauron?" Okay. He always responds with, "I have many names."
I haven't caught that. That's good though. Yeah,
there's like 3 or 4 times that he's asked that question point blank specifically, and every time he responds with, "I have many names."
In my notes, I wrote that he replied with, he was raised in a middle-class family. But then we cut to Theo and Isildur. Just in case you missed Theo and Isildur from episode 4 that we haven't seen in a while. Isildur is polishing a knife, and Theo comes in, and it appears the two are now roommates after they were stranded out by the Ents in the woods. We get some nods to Theo's mother, just in case you forgot Bronwyn from season 1. Isildur is leaving and asks if Theo wants to go with him. And Theo says no, he wants to stay, and gives Isildur a hug. Either months have passed, or it was kind of awkward. So I kind of got the impression that they have been settled in this place for a while now.
Yeah, same.
Which I have questions, because last time we saw them, Arondir was with them. And then we've caught up with him in the last 3 episodes to a battle that's happening now. And it appeared he went straight from there to here. So, but I guess we've also said that it appears the battle has taken longer than we see on screen. Weeks.
It just goes back to the show in this season did a very poor job of demonstrating the passage of time.
Okay. So I'll give them, their friends now. They hug, they leave. Theo leaves and someone else enters. And this is a scene I did not need. Don't need. And it's Estrid. Surprise, surprise.
Oh my gosh, that's so...
Uh-huh. after she betrayed Isildur multiple times when she was his prisoner, or she tried to betray him to the men who followed Sauron, which aren't they the same people who are now in Pelargir?
Yeah, they're bros now. They're hanging out.
Okay. Yeah, so apparently now she's in love with Isildur, not Hagen, her betrothed. In fact, now Hagen makes her feel like vomiting. That's not a joke. That's what she said. So she is here to kiss Isildur before he leaves. Because we needed this relationship. I really care about this a lot. Then we see Kemen getting off the boat, and Theo tells him multiple times that he is the son of Bronwyn. And Kemen, this was one spot where the show got this right. Kemen doesn't care who Bronwyn is or who Theo is.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, Kemen's reacting as any normal person would. But I was still like, why did they feel like insisting on bringing I'm Theo, son of Bronwyn?
It's almost like they had a quota for the number of times they had to use Bronwyn's name. And they got to episode 8 and they were like, oh no, we have to use her name like 5 more times before the end of the season. And so they threw it all into this scene. That's what it felt like.
We can have Theo say it twice, and then we're gonna have Hagen, who's also standing right there, say, I don't think you heard him.
Yeah.
He's the son of Bronwyn. Kemen just keeps walking. This was a weird scene. But then Kemen sees Isildur and fakes that he is perfectly happy to see Isildur. And it's like, oh, your sister has missed you so much. Isildur tries to take Estrid right in front of Hagen. And Kemen's like,
it's a flex.
Yeah, it was. No low people on the boat. Your dad is wanted for treason, by the way, and my dad is now king, so not much I can do to get this girl on the boat. Then Kemen announces that Kemen announces that Pelargir will now have to pay basically a tax of timber in order to get supplies from Numenor. And this is kind of setting up, all I could see that this is setting up is a future revolt situation. The way I see this going,
actually is canon. So it doesn't happen all at once. It happens over the course of like many generations. But again, we're having to fudge the passage of time in this show because you can only do so much in 9 hours of screen time per season, 10 hours maybe. But it is a thing that the Numenorians, when they first come over to Middle Earth, they're like super cool. They like help the low men figure out like how to farm and how to do whatever they need to do to be successful. And then as time goes on and the Numenorians start sucking more and more, they start levying taxes and they essentially start like oppressing the people of Middle Earth instead of aiding them. So I don't have a problem with them going in that direction because it is canon. Again, it's happening really, really quickly, but again, you got to fudge the passage of time to some extent for some of these things.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with this at all. I think the one thing that you mentioned that I got no sense of that from the show is that the Numenorians were initially nice.
Right.
You know, I never saw the Numenorians teaching them how to farm, doing that. That would have been cool to see. The Numenorians building them up and then Kemen coming in and being like, hey, by the way.
Because to this point, it's been pitched that like the Numenorians just stay on their island and they don't associate with anybody else. They don't associate with the elves. They don't associate with any of the men of Middle Earth. Like they can do their thing. We're out here on our awesome island doing our thing and we don't care about anybody else. It's not really how it was. And so for them to just roll up here and be like, hey, we own this now is, it's a little different.
Yeah, because I think he says it was an outpost for Numenor or something.
Right.
And he's like, well, now you're going to pay us. And it was just it was sudden. This isn't one of the scenes I hated other than the insistence on Bronwyn. Like, other than that, this scene was actually... I saw where it's setting up potential storylines in the future that Theo and Isildur and Kemen could all be like functional parts of the story too.
Right.
So, and I also got the future hint of the Ents. After all, they're just trees. I was like, oh, Ents again after we encountered them in the 4th episode.
I will say, if an Ent shows up in season like 3 or 4 and just like smooshes, what's his face? Kemen, I'd be okay with that.
I'm all right with that. That's one of the top ways I'd like to see him go right now.
Yeah, that's just fine.
Yep. We see Galadriel being taken to Adar, and speaking of ways we wanted to see people go, this was not on my list. Galadriel's being taken to Adar, and anytime these two are on screen, for some reason the director insists on Dutch angles just for funsies. We see Adar is healed and is wearing Galadriel's ring. So her ring, as we've established multiple times, heals people and things, according to the tree. Adar wants the last and only alliance of orcs and elves to bring down Sauron. And it's just kind of, it's a laughably ridiculous proposal. I don't see this working out in any world. And I hate that the show wrote Galadriel in a way where she's like, okay,
she's like, yeah, let's do it. Sounds great.
Yeah, this peace for everyone. All right. I hate the way they wrote that. Her ring will fix everything between the elves and the orcs is basically what Adar says. And I don't understand how. He hands the ring back to her and his scarring returns, which to me, I don't know if the ring reduced the scarring and because it's old it returned, or that would lead me to believe that the healing properties of the ring are only temporary. Which would cause all kinds of problems.
Or it didn't actually heal him, it just changed his visage. Like it just changed the look of things. It didn't actually heal the wounds. So as soon as he removed it, the illusion or whatever went away and he was shown to still have the same scarring and everything that he had before.
It's another power of Galadriel's ring that we discovered.
It's another thing that doesn't make sense.
Okay, you said it. Then the orcs go all Eyes of March on Adar, while Galadriel just stands there. Literally, the shot after this happens and you see Galadriel, she's just... That's it. She's standing there.
The entire time, Katie was like, why is she just standing there? What is she doing?
It's so... Oh, okay. So right here is where I'm going to tell you where I wanted this episode to go. And it's not that I wanted it to go there because I'm being like fanboy fiction. This would have been cool. I feel like the show genuinely set up this conflict that we didn't get. And so what I saw going down in this was Adar battling Sauron for claim of the orcs. And so the duel that I pictured happening in this final episode is Adar and Sauron. Basically, Sauron echoing what was set up in the first episode when Adar killed Sauron. And instead, we get this, it's kind of in character, but it's also, it's disappointing. And I see that we've set this up too with the way the elves looked at Adar in the previous episode about like, Father, we thought you cared for us. But then they go wholly into this guy who isn't even pretending to not care about them. He's not like, oh, you're my children. In fact, as they go Ides of March on Adar, Adar is dying and reaches up and says, my children. And yeah.
So I have a problem with half of this and I don't have a problem with the other half. I don't necessarily have a problem with the Ides of Marching of Adar because, to your point, they've been setting that up for the entire season. In episode like 2, they're in Mordor and Sauron is talking, or Adar is talking with Glug, and he's all like, "Oh, do we really have to go? Like, we have our own home here. Can't we just stay here?" And Adar is like, no, we have to go because no one will be safe. We won't be safe even here in our home if Sauron still exists. So, like, they start it there, and then throughout the course of the battle, the orcs are like, hey, we're getting killed out here. Hey, maybe don't send in Damrod because he's going to kill our own. And Adar just keeps like, go do it. So I think they did a good job of setting up the betrayal.
Yes.
The problem is maybe the orcs just thought they were not going to have a leader after that, because to what you just said, Sauron hasn't given them anything to earn their loyalty. Like, there's no, if that is what they responded to, if they responded to Adar as being like their father, he cares about us, he loves us, whatever, then why would you all of a sudden be like, this guy doesn't care about us at all, we should follow him now?
He's the one.
Like, just because he's powerful, just like, so that's the part of it that I'm like, that doesn't make sense. Like, maybe they're just going to respond out of fear, and that, yeah, you can make the argument that they're going to be Sauron's henchmen from here on out of just fear and hatred of him, but that's about all you can do.
Yeah, I just, like, to your point, setting up the betrayal, I still think it worked, and I know I'm just like, I would have enjoyed it so much more. Because you set that up, you have that betrayal thing going of, like, the orcs aren't super thrilled with Adar's leadership lately, and all they've heard about is he is protecting them from Sauron. So if the orcs are watching on as Adar and Sauron fight each other and see that Adar loses, suddenly that answers the question of why the orcs would then follow Sauron, because they see his power on display against a person they called father.
Right.
And it's just, this was a clunky way. I didn't really hate the Ides of March. The first time I watched it, I was like, oh, that's how we're going to do it. Second time I watched it, I was like, that was really disappointing. So it was like, in the heat of the moment, I was kind of okay with it. On rewatch, after what happens with the rest of the episode, I was more disappointed in it.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Galadriel's just awkward. Sauron shows up. He grabs Morgoth's crown, and he commands the orcs to raise a Region and bring him the elf leaders, which Adar had in captivity already based on the end of the previous episode. So the script writer must not have read the pages of the previous episode when setting up this scene. I got so annoyed because it ended with Adar taking the ring off of Elrond's armor. Right. And now they're totally separated, not in clunky again. But then we see Galadriel pick up her sword and she starts to duel Sauron, who sees the Elvish ring for the first time. I kind of liked that moment.
I did too.
I kind of liked that moment because it implied that he hasn't been involved in that process like they've said. I was like, oh, good. But then he straight up lies to her and he says, it's more beautiful than Celebrimbor made it sound. I was like, it's a chunk of glass. It's not beautiful. Anyways, we then cut to Gil-galad, Elrond, and Arondir being taken into the only courtyard in all of Eregion, the one outside of Celebrimbor's tower.
Yep.
Where the orcs are burning stuff. What'd you say?
I just said, yeah.
Yeah. Apparently it's the only courtyard.
It's the only one in the entire city. They have one courtyard, and it's right in front of Celebrimbor's tower.
Yep. It's where everything important happens.
Yep.
And apparently Arondir is now fully healed from being stabbed at the end of the last episode.
So here's number 2 of how did we get here? When we last left Arondir, he was in the field in front of the walls of the city. He had just been stabbed twice. by Adar and thrown to the ground, and now he's fine. He's just hanging out. Like, yeah. He doesn't seem to be hobbled at all by any kind of injury. He's just, it's like it didn't happen.
There's not even blood on his armor from those wounds.
There's no blood. There's no stab wound. It's just, he's fine.
Yep. He's all good. I was deeply frustrated by that. But like I said at the end of the last one, I think Arondir is going to. It could go one way, one or the other of where he dies and we get a scene, or he recovers. Well, they actually avoided the recovering and they just jumped back and basically retconned him being stabbed to where he's totally fine now. He was just captured. So none of that mattered.
None of the above.
Yeah. The orcs are burning stuff. The elves get mad as they start to burn Celebrimbor scrolls, understandably so. And they start to fight back. And that's where it becomes super clear that Arondir is totally fine. We see more Galadriel and Sauron fight. Again, I don't feel like they were setting this up. I don't feel like the Galadriel-Sauron duel is what I was looking for out of this episode.
Well, I think they felt like they wanted to recreate episode 8 of season 1, where they had the
mind duel,
which was really, really cool. So now they were like, we're going to do kind of still a mind duel because Sauron changes into different people. He's Sauron and then he's Celebrimbor and then he's Galadriel. So he's still doing his power of the mind kind of thing, but also physically dueling. Yeah.
So Sauron changes his appearance multiple times. First it's Halbrand, then to Galadriel herself, then to Celebrimbor, trying to get under her skin. Doesn't work. Galadriel Chuck Norris's Sauron, and somehow that gives her the upper hand for a brief second. Then he stabs her with the Iron Crown and says that he would have made her his queen. And they've just been real hard on this Sauron Galadriel queen thing for 2 seasons now.
They did it in episode 8 of season 1, and they're doing it again in episode 8 of season 2.
And I'll be honest, I don't hate that. As many relationships as they've tried to force here, the idea of Galadriel being an evil queen is kind of terrifying and awesome.
Especially with the whole Mirror of Galadriel thing, where she's all like, man, I do really want that ring, but I'll tell you, you'd have a big old evil queen if I did get it. And that is hinted at here. So I'm with you. I don't hate it.
I don't hate it. I think it'd be kind of I want to see an alternate version where that plays out because I think it'd be crazy. But then she's apparently dying. She falls to the ground. And Sauron hears a horn, and maybe we see dwarves coming to the aid of the city from above. Can't really tell what it is. Either way, there's about 15 people running down the road. But somehow they're already deep into the city, blowing horns to get all the orcs' attention. They rescue the elves. Elrond shouts out, Durin, just to a random elf in armor. And then the elf turns around and is like, nah, Durin's not here, man. And no, he's in mourning, and that's all he says. I'm like, now is not the time. Then back above the city, Galadriel decides to throw herself off a cliff instead of giving Sauron the ring, because what could be more dramatic? She says dreamily, holding out the ring, "You wish to heal Middle Earth, and then heal yourself," and jumps off the cliff.
And everybody booed and threw things.
Yes.
Based on Bryce's reaction, I'm guessing that's when he flipped his coffee table.
It's when I laughed out loud, honestly. That's really... The other part that I found was double down on the humor of this moment was it showed how far away she is falling, and yet somehow Elrond, Arondir, Gil-galad stopped in the middle of their battle, and we're all like,
right.
How did they know? Anyways,
she's 3/4 of a mile away and 300 feet up on the side of a cliff, and they're like, oh, there she is.
3 elves in the midst of battle stopped to watch.
It is canon that elves have real good vision. Okay.
So they got one thing right.
They were in the middle of a battle, so.
Caleb, I swear to God, if you bring up another canon moment, I promise you, I swear to God, don't do it again. Not this episode.
That's my role. That's my role here.
We're trying to give the show as much credit as we
trying
can.
to give the show credit. Yes, let's give him some more credit. Why don't we?
Because to be honest, I haven't hated this show. I've hated moments of this show. So this is what I mean by this whole scenario is what I mean by it would have been far more entertaining and far more coherent to have this duel on the side of the mountain be Adar and Sauron. This drama queen moment of throwing herself off a cliff and then the healing that happens after it and all of this would not, like, the worst parts of this episode would have been gone if we had actually had a duel for who is going to be the Dark Lord.
Yeah.
And that would have set
Give
up.
me a Highlander. There can be only one fight to the death.
And the elves are just watching in horror as it happens. Like, we got to get out of here now.
Yeah.
Like, it would have worked so much better. But I'm not in the writer's room. I'm not sure many people were in the writer's room. And if they were definitely on something illegal. Where did I leave off?
Galadriel jumped off the cliff.
Oh, yeah. Heal yourself. I don't even know what that means. The other elves watch from at least a mile away. We see Sauron turn and kill the lead orc. What was his name?
Glug.
Yeah, Glug comes up and he's like, man, we can't keep doing this. We're going to lose a bunch of people. And then Sauron just stabs him. And it's a dramatic change from Adar. And that's what you get. But the elves, again, Arondir running at the front as if he hadn't been stabbed hours ago, arrives to Galadriel's broken body, and we get some elvish magic as they heal her. But it doesn't work until Elrond goes against everything he believes in this show to wear the magic ring. And then he can heal her. We see Poppy. We cut to Poppy and hobbits picking up what looks like yarn and trinkets and probably represents their belongings. But Nori says we have to fix this and Poppy tells her this story about how things can't be fixed. Some things are lost forever. This is spoken over shots of King Durin's funeral shroud, the Tower of Eregion falling as the elves are outside of it now, and Estrid holding her husband's hand as Isildur sails away. We see Muriel standing in chains in front of Farazan, and we see Elendil riding outside of the city. And then Poppy continues with what's broke is broke, and we have to accept it. All anybody can do is build something new. I didn't hate the monologue. It didn't hit me quite as much as some of the previous.
Agreed. It wasn't bad. It wasn't their best, but it wasn't bad.
Right. It was just kind of a weird. Like, I didn't feel like they actually broke anything or lost anything because I'm not sure what happened with the hobbits in this season. That storyline, like, it didn't have the weight because it was so shoddily written. They say goodbye to the stranger after calling him the moment we've all been waiting for. 16 episodes in the making.
I'm ready for this. Please tell me your thoughts.
They say goodbye to the stranger after calling him Grand Elf, which they've already hinted at before. But now They say goodbye, Grand Elf. And that sounds a lot like Gandalf. All the hobbits.
Whoa. I did not put that together. You just blew my mind.
Whoa. All the hobbits call him Gandalf, and he echoes the name, and my eyes rolled right out of my face. And it's just... So that's what we're doing. This is Gandalf. Nori and Gandalf say goodbye, and I hope to God we don't see her again, because how interesting is the story of her wandering until she finds the Shire? It's not.
The only way they can make it interesting is going to be still uninteresting. It's going to be stuff like they're going to throw stuff in there like, oh, they're wandering through like the Barrow Whites and the like that kind of the ends. Like it will be on their journey. They run into other things that are referenced in. Yeah. And I think that's the only way they can keep that story interesting. But
But,
even
but
that
guys,
isn't all that interesting.
The Shire. Don't you remember the Shire from Lord of the Rings? Guys, watch the Shire.
Bryce, when did you wake up? He was silent for 50 consecutive minutes, and now he's chiming in. Let's go.
See, but now
I'm
we're
just
getting.
holding. I'm trying to let you.
Football game he was watching. That's what it is.
Yeah, it's over now. Here's the thing: if the Hobbit's Wandering to Find the Shire was a separate show where I knew I was tuning in to just watch Hobbit community shenanigans every week for 30 minutes, I probably would enjoy it. That community of hobbits and the history of hobbits, it's a niche in Middle Earth that's fun and entertaining. I don't want it while Sauron is on the rise, destroying the rest of Middle Earth. I don't care about this little story right now. If it was its own thing, probably tune in. But as is, I don't have any more need.
It's just taking screen time away from the stories we care about.
Yes. So she leaves him without a hug or a thank you or anything. It's just like, I think it's time I go my way and you go yours. And he was like, yep. And they nod.
And then she walks away.
Yeah, with tears in their eyes. And it's just bizarre after everything they've been through. And she chose to go with him at the end of the previous season. So she was kind of going on her path because it's not like anybody forced her to follow the stranger. She chose to do that to begin with. So anyways, and he finds his staff actually just laying in the rubble there. It's there. Then he walks through the blue filtered night to Tom's house. He says, he walks in the door. You were testing me, weren't you? And back when he dropped the abomination of the line in the previous episode, that was all a test. And Gandalf was meant to choose friendship over power. And that Tom says a staff chooses the wizard. It finds him just like his name does.
The wand chooses the wizard.
Tom Bombadil is Mr. Ollivander in this moment.
Yeah. I just this also made me hate. I hated that line when it appeared in episode 6 so much. And this whole, it was a test, made it so much worse. Made it so much worse. But this is where he admits that his name is Gandalf. And they sing a song about around the fire together. And quite frankly, this story can end right here too. I can end right here. I don't need to see Gandalf again until Fellowship of the Ring. I know there's adventures that happen in there.
You mean until the hunt for Gollum?
Doesn't that take place like after Bilbo's birthday party?
Yeah, it's in between.
Yeah.
It's in that time window.
Yep. So I don't... Here's the thing. I can accept that he's Gandalf. Canonically, there are issues. Sure, I mean, he's in the wrong time period. But didn't the name Gandalf come from men from a different region to begin with? Didn't he have another name before Gandalf?
He had a lot of names. He goes through that in, I think it's the Fellowship of the Ring. He talks about how he's called Mithrandir over here, and he's called Gandalf over here, and he's called Olorin over here. And he has like 4 or 5 names. I can't remember which area he's called Gandalf. It probably is like the West, like the Shire and that area. So
it's just, I feel like this was a missed opportunity. I know why they did it. Gandalf is the most recognizable. He's probably one of the most recognizable wizards outside of Harry Potter in all of pop culture.
Big time.
So I get it. It's also just incredibly lazy writing to not just like, hey, you know, Gandalf, there were 5 of them. Let's talk about 2 of the ones you haven't met yet.
Right.
So, but anyways, I can get over it. I'm not happy about it, but I can get over it. We cut to the stars above them, and we see that star pattern that he was searching for all of season 1 is above him now. So this moment of finding his staff, realizing he's Gandalf, sitting with Tom, is apparently what he's been searching for 2 seasons. And then we pan down and we see that it is the Dark Wizard who's looking up at the stars, and the music gets ominous, and that's it. It cuts. I'm not exactly sure what that scene meant, other than like, hey, Dark Wizard's still out there. Watch out, buddy.
Just a reminder. Hey, this guy's here too.
Yep. Then we cut to the dwarves and basically find out that Durin's brother might be coming to take the throne from him, setting up a possible dwarven civil war issue thing. Very similar. It seems very similar to what's going on in Numenor at the moment. And the only thing that I thought was significant about that, other than like setting up potential storylines, is the shot ends with Durin looking at his father's ring like he might be tempted to wear it.
Mm-hmm.
Which I thought was cheap after how hard Durin fought to get it off of his dad, and after how he saw that it corrupted his father.
Yeah, and there was the scene between him and Disa where she was like, promise me you'll never wear one. And he says, I swear to you, I'll never wear one. Like, they did the whole big thing. So it's probably setting up a story of he was like as far away from wanting to use one as he could possibly get. In season 3, we might see like stuff start to slip away from him and him get desperate to the point where he's like, this is my only shot kind of thing. So it's probably setting up a story arc like that.
That could make for some entertaining television.
It could make it interesting. And the other thing with the whole
very Walter White.
The whole brother might be coming to take you out. It's a very Game of Thrones storyline. So maybe we'll get a little like political intrigue kind of.
Here's what makes me nervous about that. Numenor is a very Game of Thrones storyline,
right?
And they have not handled that exactly well. But the Dwarven storyline has been one of the stronger written stories throughout the season. So, throughout the show. We'll see. So after Durin looks tempted at the ring, we then see Galadriel wake up in one of the worst shots in the entire show. She wakes up, and to be honest, this is when I realize I don't like Morfydd Clark.
Oh.
Took you this long?
I saw this scene and I was like, she's not good.
Well, some people are late bloomers. It's okay.
Yeah, she's not that good. I gave her the benefit of the doubt for 2 seasons now.
Yeah.
But then when she's laying there and that camera's focused on her and she's waking up and she's just like, I'm like, what faces are you making? What sounds are you making? And then she like sits up and then Gil-galad says something about he's never known her to be so quiet, and then she's fine. She stops moaning. She's no longer in pain. Faces stop. I was just like, I think I was like, man, she kind of delivered that bad, and I wanted to give it to the writing. I was like, they wrote that bad. But I think that scene where she had no lines to say whatsoever and was just supposed to be in pain, I was like, yeah, I don't think I like Morfydd Clark. So that was the moment for me. That scene right there. They are at a sanctuary protected by the Elven Rings, which I've been led to believe will later be Rivendell.
I was thinking that was going to be the grand finale send-off moment of season 2, because Eregion gets sacked. A bunch of elves are without a home now. And that is how Imladris is started. Imladris is the valley where Rivendell is built. And that's how Elrond gets his lordship of Rivendell. I thought that was going to be the big reveal here. It was going to be like, this place, we will build a new city where we can be safe and protected by the rings. We'll call it Rivendell. Roll credits. I thought it was going to be something like that. But no, it was just, hey, we're over here now. Yeah.
So that's my problem with it. So it will later be Rivendell, and we see Elrond put her ring on her in a very wedding-like moment. And apparently, Arondir now gathers people for Gilgalad. And he's like, "Hey, King, I got all the people out." And it's like, "Thanks, thanks, Arondir." And the elves debate if the 6 of them that survived Eregion should attack Sauron or stay here to gather their strength. And instead of that moment that you just described, we get Galadriel repeating Celebrimbor's great line from the previous episode about strength overcoming light. And then Galadriel, Gilgalad, Elrond, and Arondir pose on a cliff for the artwork for their upcoming album, and the elves cheer. The end.
Massive missed opportunity for your sending off moment of season 2. Very big missed opportunity there. Because I thought the same thing that you did. It was like, okay, so you're trying to figure out if you should attack Sauron or like go fortify a city somewhere. Aren't there like 50 people here, and aren't like 40 of them like artisans from Eregion?
They don't exactly look like soldiers.
With what army? I mean, you have to assume not all of Lindon was emptied in order to go defend Eregion. Like, there are going to be other elves elsewhere. Like, you still have Círdan and his people by the sea. Like, it's not like every elf in Middle Earth went to Eregion and was killed. But it's like, you guys just took a pretty big beating. I think your decision should be pretty easy of, hey, we probably shouldn't go on an offensive right now. We should probably rest up and fortify. And yeah, it shouldn't really be much of a decision.
And here's like that moment encompasses I wrote 3 issues I have with the show that make it sound like I probably just hate the show. I don't. I actually enjoyed tuning in every Thursday to see what was coming.
I hate the show. You like it.
And that's fine. Bryce can hate the show.
I enjoyed moments of the show. I've been very clear that there are moments of the show that I have not enjoyed at all. But overall, I feel like this episode encompasses the 3 things that have driven me crazy about it. Clunky writing of important scenes handled poorly. And part of that is not so much that the moment itself. Take Celebrimbor's death as an example. Written fairly well for the scene, but not as heavy as it could have been if we had given these characters more time in the script throughout the season. If we had given us more story of them, we could have made this moment more impactful. Or this very end of Rivendell, it felt cheap. The writing, the scale of everything. I've talked many times about how a gathering of people seems to be max of 30 and no more. And we're talking about these surviving elves from Eregion. And all of the shots are like 15 people over here by a tree, 15 people over here on a rock. And then apparently the 4 leaders are like way up on a cliff, separated from everybody else. And like, that's what we see of these people. And so I'm left thinking the elves escaped with like the skin, the clothes on their back and nothing else. But there's no devastation among them. There's no like crying and weeping for what was lost. It's just like, yeah. All right, what's next? And we just move on.
There's definitely people like just sitting around looking bummed, but that's it. Like, it's definitely not to the scope of what it should be.
No, it's not. It's not Return of the King. Like in Return of the King, when they're attacking that city, we see mothers cradling sobbing children in tears, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to feel. Yep, yeah. That's what I want to feel. I don't feel like they narrowly escaped something bad. In fact, other than showing us that the city fell, I would think they just abandoned it and escaped. Like the writing has failed, and the direction is my third thing, have failed to create scale both in size of how many people lived in Eregion, because we saw the one courtyard every time we were in a Region. We saw that one Merdania girl every time we were in a Region. That's the only people we talked to. So a Region feels real small right now. So, and that's partially the direction, partially the writing, and they're both, you can make the scale of the show feel bigger without having to go too overboard. The one thing that I was watching this one and sorely missing and realizing it's a lost art today in filmmaking is miniatures.
Yeah.
Miniatures. Build a miniature Region and use it to film, and we can establish scale a little bit better. And
that's one of the things they lost when they moved production out of New Zealand and away from Weta Workshop. Like, Weta specializes in bigatures. Like, I saw one. I walked through a warehouse-sized room with a bigature built in it, and it was incredible. Like, it was so cool.
Yeah,
and it's not that difficult to just do something like that. But when you move away from that and you move to whatever studio they're filming in London, like, for whatever reason, they just don't do it. They're like, we'll just CG it, or we'll build a set. And when those are your only two options, you can't do those other things.
No, but you feel it. I feel the difference. So great sci-fi and fantasy throughout movie history, and there's only really one great fantasy movie in movie history. That's the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I can't think of many other great fantasy movies.
Right.
But Star Wars and Lord of the Rings, they all used those miniatures for filming. And they feel tangible because they are.
Mm-hmm.
They are. And then you supplement that with your CGI and you get a full picture. And I'm just watching this conclusion, and I saw online somebody had I call them the postcard shots from the show of where it showed the city and then had the title on it.
Yep.
They showed a Region from season 1 and a Region from season 2, and it looks different. It did not look like the same city. And it's just like consistency in these things. So those are my 3 things. Overall, I feel like they've totally botched the scale, both in the scale of emotion and tragedy of what happened at the end of this season and the scale of how big was a Region, how devastating were the elves' losses.
Mm-hmm.
Even Pelargir has 20 people standing on the shore. You know, how many people live in these places? It's so ambiguous. But the scale of emotion, the scale of the cast, and the writing has been clunky. I do feel like there are probably 2 or 3 writers who write certain characters, and they do a good job. The people writing Sauron have been pretty consistently good.
Yeah.
The people writing The Stranger and Nori and Poppy, fired them.
Get them out of here.
Get them out. They don't need to come back. So let's keep the good ones. Let's add some more good ones. But overall, I also think Charlotte Brandstrom as a director for most of these episodes, I wanted to like her. But as a director, she should have caught things like Arondir being stabbed at the end of one episode and fine in the next.
Right.
She should have caught, like, a director on a budget would know how to handle making scale look larger. You would know how to shoot a crowd to make it feel like there are 150 people here and not 30.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so there are scenes where I think she does a great job. We talked about that long shot of the battle when we first get into Region in this one. There are moments where I do see some talent and she's good. I just wonder if this show's a little bit too big for her. So those are my thoughts on it. Overall, I think season 2 is an improvement over season 1. I think the highs are higher, but I do think the lows in season 2 are lower. So I'll be very curious to go see where season 3 goes, because I actually think we put all of the things I hated about season 2 in a spot where they don't need to come back next season. So I'll be really curious to see what happens.
Right.
So I just did my rant.
All right, Bryce, let's get this over with.
You don't like this show.
Yeah. Yeah, he's right.
All right, there's Bryce's summary.
Yep. Yeah. I don't even know where to start, honestly. I think that this is such a downgrade from season 1. And Caleb, you as my witness can absolutely back me up when I say that I watched season 1 just like I watched this one all the way through. And I came out of season 1 saying, you know what? Not a perfect show. There are a lot of things I did like in this. There were those, as we keep saying, moments. There was those moments where it flashed. I was like, yeah, I can see where this is going. Even though I'm not the biggest Lord of the Rings fan, I may not know all the content. I can't say, you know what? I'll check out season 2. I'll see what happens because I'm genuinely interested to see if they can like improve on some of these mistakes. And
can confirm that is more or less what you said after you watched season 1.
Okay, cool. So when I say that this season may just kill this show at this point, I don't say that with malice, more of just I don't know how they come back from this season. They will probably get a season 3. And you know what? Amazon has screw you money. They may just finish out the entire show with all 5 seasons. And that would, I mean, again, they have screw you money.
They're going to do it to spite people like you.
Yeah, exactly. Right. No, that just like they did with the second Joker movie, they have money to just screw people over and say, you know what, you like this stuff? Well, guess what? Here's some crap for you. Like it wouldn't surprise me because yeah, because even after
Galadriel's gonna wake up and turns out she's not the real Galadriel. She inspired another elf.
She inspired another. Exactly. Yeah, because I did go just see Joker recently, and it's basically kind of the same thing that's happening with this show. I walked out, it was a horrid movie in my opinion. The stuff I thought I would hate about it, I actually enjoyed for the most part, like the musical stuff. But like I wasn't even like angry walking out of it. It was just more of like, did I just get trolled? Are they like trolling me now? Like I feel like there's some malice behind this at this point. And this final episode, I was actually disappointed more than angry at anything. Like you say, like the part with Celebrimbor and Sauron really disappointed me because I felt that should have been the highest point of this episode. Like that was the only storyline I was genuinely enjoying for this season and getting into. And for the most part, I would have been fine had the execution been better. This man's getting shot with arrows. Like he has 6-8 arrows in his body at this point. And you're telling me he stands up, and as he's standing up, they're clicking and clacking as he's getting up. Like it's these decisions that they're making. Like this would have been fine. Like he can be on the ground, or he doesn't have to have arrows in him. Like you're stealing from the moment, and I can't focus on the actual like heaviness of this moment because you're making stupid decisions that are taking me out of it.
You are the first person I've heard complain about the number of arrows in him as he stood up.
Yes, because they're clicking and clacking. It's so
did you read the Fellowship of the Ring?
I'm just saying.
Did you read Fellowship of the Ring?
I have not read Fellowship of the Ring. So I'm not complaining about. No. I'm not complaining about the arrows in him. I'm complaining.
Dies of 3 arrows. In the book, it's like 9.
You're right.
He rips 6 of them out, and then they find him with
But that moment wasn't it wasn't distracting and taking away from what should have been a heavier moment. And even with him putting the spear through him and putting him up, and it looks like wobbly, it doesn't even look like he's like firmly holding him. I just felt distracted through that scene. Whereas again, I had those distractions not been there, I probably would have been like, yeah, that was the ending to that story that I was looking for. Like it was okay. Like it was the best part of this season. Like whatever. And I did laugh out loud too when Galadriel fell off the edge. Like, heal yourself.
Heal yourself.
Oh my gosh, that was so funny.
It's the Middle Earth FU.
Yes, that's exactly what she pretty much just like gave him the birds and then jumped off the cliff.
Yes, exactly. It's just,
with an elf ring on both fingers.
Aim for the bushes, baby. Aim for the bushes. Moving forward through that part fell short for me. I agree. The tilted shots, like back to back to back to back to back times like 20. When I'm forgetting his name. Adar, where he gets betrayed. And Caleb, I'm gonna back you up even more on this. I really miss the old actor who played Adar. Like at this point, it's just like,
can we bring him back for season 3, please?
He just died. But can we bring him back?
I don't know what the disagreement was. I don't know if he got fired or if he left and said he wasn't coming back. But can we please get him back? Because like, Sam Hazeldine is doing his best, but he just doesn't have it. He's just not as good.
He doesn't have that it factor.
Season 3 opens with an orc coming to Sauron, and he says, "Somehow, Adar returned."
Yeah, and Sam, I will give you kudos because I felt the same way, and I thought that twist and death was so underwhelming and disappointing because I too thought, well, we're going to get a nice little conflict here of Adar and Sauron. We should see a little bit more back and forth, tension. Like, oh, no, the orcs just decided to switch sides like out of nowhere. Like, you cannot convince me that some comments Adar made throughout the season convince those orcs just to go to a guy who does not care about them. Like, I don't know what was said, and that's an issue with the rest of the season, that we don't get any context to anything, and we're just supposed to intake this context and assume the best at the end of the day. I'm not buying that, which then leads to a very underwhelming fight between Galadriel and Sauron that felt like ballerinas like dancing around each other. And makes me
owning her. Can we talk about that for a second?
Oh, he beat the snot out of her.
And she was out of breath, panting, made her look ridiculous.
Yes. And I don't know if I'm the only one who feels as strongly about it. I think that the romance like angle they're taking is so dumb. Like, I don't know. I just kill her, dude. Like, you have her, just kill her. Like, you're Sauron. You don't care about that. You just want to rule Middle Earth. Like, please. Like, that's how I felt about that. And then, heal yourself. She falls off, whatever, I guess. What even happens after that? I don't know. Yeah, the
I'm gonna
dwarves
start using that when people make me mad.
Heal yourself.
You know what? Go heal yourself.
I don't feel like I need to spend time on any of the other useless storylines. That brings me to my final point. Like I said, next season I think is their make or break. Amazon has screw you money. They could just say, go do the 5 seasons. It doesn't matter. These people hate it. Oh, we're just gonna piss them off. So if they do that, let's just throw some ideas out there here to help season 3 somehow, put this whole train wreck back on course. Let's go ahead and just cut basically every single storyline that doesn't involve Sauron and Galadriel and the rings, and we're basically good to go at this point.
Except Durin. I do want Durin back. Well, he involves the rings.
I'm even checked out on the Durin storyline. Like, and that was, and I'm with you. I don't think it was necessarily a bad storyline. I enjoyed it like midway through the season, but like that final like episode where it's just kind of like this hand-fisted like last moment of the Balroth and his father going to fight. It's like that felt like kind of rushed and out of place for something that felt so like big that we were building up to. Like you were hinting at it the entire season. Why did we only get like 5 minutes at the beginning to see that? Like that, I felt like there should have been a lot more payoff to that moment instead of just a really cool visual. Like it looked really good. But yeah,
we all knew was coming.
Yeah, why is that story still going? Like, why are we still going down that path? Like, I was kind of expecting that to be the end of it. Like, it's just gonna wreak havoc and kill everyone. But nope, I guess we're just going to wait and see what happens.
So here's the other thing you mentioned because you brought that up. The other way I thought I could see the season ending is that the previous episode was primarily the battle in Eregion. And I could have been happy with it ending on the cliffhanger of Adar taking the ring from Elrond. And then this episode being primarily about the Balrog just wreaking havoc in Moria.
Yeah,
and I thought we were going to get that as the primary for this one, and then wrap up the others. But
exactly.
It's just the first 5 minutes, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, and like we've all said, Game of Thrones wannabe storyline. We just need to end it. It's not interesting. It's boring. like even some of these hand-fisted characters, like I know Isildur is important because obviously he's the one who cuts off Sauron's fingers, but he was just kind of forced into this season for like one little storyline that took up about 10-20 minutes of an episode, and even that whole section was boring and made no sense. Arondir is just a character they throw in when I want to see some fancy Matrix flips go on and action sequences. He is such a boring character.
And
no, it's okay. Staring stone face at the camera in every scene. Like, does he have any different face besides the one he constantly shows on screen?
So I did hear somebody say that they like Arondir because he acts the most like an elf of any of the elves.
That's fair. That's a good point. And I was like,
you know what? He is kind of that. I always thought Tolkien wrote the elves as kind of aloof, like not necessarily rude, but definitely like, we're a little bit better than you.
Here's the thing. Tolkien wrote the elves very, very differently in the different contexts. So Katie and I were listening to the audiobook of The Hobbit on our way down to camping last weekend. And there's a scene where the dwarves and Bilbo and Gandalf are walking into Rivendell, and the elves are essentially just trolling them. They're singing a very, very silly song, and they're like poking fun at everybody, and they're like super all like, they're all like Fae and everything. And then in other writings, they're like, give me my family heirloom back or I will kill you and everyone that you love and then burn your house down and teabag your crops. Like, they're all over the place in the writing, depending on like the location and the age, and like they're kind of everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, let's just kill every storyline to this point. Let's just stick with the rings and, you know, what we actually enjoy. I say enjoy lightly, at least from my perspective. But basically, final point I'll make is I basically just walked away from this season, outside of being just disappointed from season one, at least. My conclusion is that if this show does not have the Lord of the Rings IP on it, this show dies this season. I truly believe that. And to your point, there is so little fantasy content out there that's actually genuinely good that I understand people wanting to just keep going through this show because we just don't have that content anywhere. We haven't, like, the last thing I could think of that was fantasy that I watched that I actually enjoyed was The Green Knight from A24. That was the last thing I remember watching. I was like, that's how little fantasy content we get here. So I understand. No
one's talking about the Wheel of Time series.
Right, so. Exactly. And House of Dragon is flopping right now for season 2 from what I've heard. So I get it. Like, I understand, like, people who are big fans of fantasy just wanting to get through this show. I just don't get how this show continuously can be defended because moments stand out. If this doesn't have the Lord of the Rings IP, the show dies. I believe that wholeheartedly. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised if we just get all 5 seasons, because why wouldn't they just finish it out? Because Amazon just has so much money. It wouldn't surprise me, but yeah, that's basically where I'm at after season 2 of Rings of Power.
I'm going to end season 2 the exact same way that I started season 2. Coming into it, I said, I am fully aware that I have a toxic relationship with this show. I know for a fact that it's going to hurt me. But I also know it's going to make me feel real good sometimes. It is the definition of a toxic relationship.
I think it's called insanity also.
And that is, no, insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. Get it right.
Okay. Of course.
My prediction was that was going to happen. That's what happened in season 1. I was like, this is probably going to be what season 2 was. And it is exactly what season 2 was. There were times where I was like, I love that. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. There were definitely times where I was like, ugh, don't like that.
What was the top moment in this season that made you flip your coffee table? Because you got on
Say
both Bryce
Gandalf.
and I can
Say
name my
Gandalf
moment.
right now.
It might have been the same one that you had when Gandalf walked out to the forest and Tom Bombadil was there, and he was like, pick your staff from the staff tree forest, and don't go chasing those halflings now. It was the Empire Strikes Back moment.
Okay.
That was probably the one that I was like, oh, this is so bad. But there were also moments that I really enjoyed. So I agree that I don't need any more of the Harfoot storyline. I know we're going to get more, but I don't need it. I know we're going to get more Gandalf. I don't need it, but I know we're going to get it. I am looking forward to Numenor and that continued storyline.
Numenor should only be getting more interesting now.
Right. Like it's all set up. The board is set, the pieces are moving, as Gandalf once said. So
He'll probably say it again in season 3.
I'll probably say it again in season 3. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to the elf storyline of like, let's watch Rivendell get established. I think that'll be pretty cool. Let's watch Sauron distribute these 9 rings to some kingdoms of men and see what that's about. Like he's probably gonna. That's what I'm most looking forward to with that storyline is like he's got 9 men rings now to go distribute to people. So we're probably going to see more kingdoms of men for Middle Earth. Probably going to go to the south to the Harad and like form some relationships there and try and sway the men to be evil and follow him. We might see some Easterlings. He might go up to Rune. There's some men up there. Like that should be entertaining and interesting. And I think nobody has said it tonight. We've said it in various other episodes that we've done. How good is Charlie Vickers?
He's so good. He's the best part of the show.
Like
it's just a shame
he understood the assignment. He initially got cast as like, oh, you're going to play a man named Halbrand. And then after they filmed the first couple episodes, they were like, actually, you're Sauron. And he was like, oh, okay. And he just immediately took to it. He has been so good. So I'm really looking forward to watching him perform more.
Have you seen any interviews with him?
A handful.
So I was watching one where the guy asked him, and I thought his response was actually pretty good. He asked him how he approached playing Anatar this season versus how he played Halbrand last season.
Right.
And he was basically asking, are you playing 2 different characters? And his response was kind of, I'm not going to say it exactly right, but he was like, no and yes, because I'm playing the same character manipulating different people. So the way I speak and the things I say, I just change it a little bit, even though I know I'm the same person. And I was like, that's actually, I love the thought process behind it. I thought it was smart. He's, like you said, he understood the assignment. He's done a great job.
Yeah. I'm hoping, I know we'll see more Círdan for sure, because he at some point has to give his ring to Gandalf, because that happens. So I really liked him. I wish we had more of him in season 2, but I'm guessing that means we'll just see more of him in future seasons. So looking forward to that. So there's a lot of things that the things that I thought were well done, I'm really looking forward to seeing more of. The things that I didn't enjoy, I'm hoping we see less of. I guess we'll see, but I will continue my toxic relationship with this show, and I will allow it to hurt me at times for the promise of the times where it'll make me feel real good.
Same, because I know what's coming, and I'm super excited to see some of those events play out.
For sure.
So, like, I'll put up with another Harfoot scene. That'll be like back in the old days when we had commercials and you had to run to the bathroom in a certain amount of time and then come back. That's what the Harfoot scenes will be for me. But yeah, we can wrap this up. I just want to some praise for Rings of Power. Paramore Mike says Rings of Power season 2 is absolutely cinema. The opening to this episode is fire. And then we
Fire,
have
get it? Because of the Balrog.
Yep. And then we have episode 8 is one of my favorite season finales ever. I just don't know. I think they pay for some of these reviews.
I have to imagine, because I also was scrolling through some comments on Instagram, and there are some people that say the things that Bryce says, and then there are some people that say the things that you just read, and it's like, there might be some people that genuinely believe the things that they're saying, but there also is probably some bot action going on there.
I mean, this one has a picture of Arondir. I don't think I've ever seen such a big upswing for a series the way that season 2 of Rings of Power built from season 1. The finale was absolutely epic and shows the promise for the series as being absolutely essential for Lord of the Rings fan. I was captivated. Well, upswing, yes. I don't know if captivated is the word I would use.
Yeah, I don't know about all that.
I think season 2 of Rings of Power might be my favorite season finale ever. Some of the shots were breathtaking. And then, here's to the brave, determined, wise, and wonderful women of season 2 finale until we meet again. And we have Poppy, Disa, Galadriel, Estrid, Elendil's daughter, who I can never remember, Nori, Muriel, the leader of the Stewards, the leader of the Stewards.
Oh, yeah.
Also can't remember her name, but...
Well, that's because it's not important and doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I think some of these are definitely paid for. But yeah, I'll continue my relationship, like you said. I'll be back for season 3. I have high hopes for season 3. I don't have much more to say other than I think they left the storylines I hated at a perfect spot to not pick them back up again, and that would make me happy.
I'm on board with that.
Yep. All right. Anything else, guys? We did it. We made it through. We made it through season 2 of Rings of Power. I don't think Bryce will be back for season 3, but Caleb and I will.
You and I will talk about it in 2026 when it's released.
Yeah, we can't take that long, man.
Can't enjoy the good without some bad in your life.
I missed that.
I said you can't enjoy the good without some bad in your life.
It makes the good that much more enjoyable. So,
and
like
it's better than just. And it's better than just
the Penguin.
Yes.
Don't watch the Penguin.
I heard don't watch the Penguin.
It's great TV.
Oh, do watch the Penguin. All right, I'll watch the Penguin.
The Penguin has been pretty freaking good so far. But I'm heading out. Thanks for joining.
See ya.
Before we jump into the next category, I want to tell you a little bit about Zencastr. When I was preparing for our 13 Nights of Halloween series, I was really searching for a way to streamline the process. I wanted a professional-looking setup to invite our guests to. I wanted quality audio and video recording, and I wanted the easiest way to release the episodes to as broad of an audience as possible. This is how I landed on Zencastr. It is now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Just log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. And speaking of audio quality, have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So if you are thinking of starting your own podcast or just want to streamline what you are already doing, go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code AVERAGECUSTOMER and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. That's average customer, one word. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all of my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
you very much.
And now we return you to our regular scheduled program in progress.
Means that